Thanks, Afolabi. This this is freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1. We're looking at the stories that are making the headlines across the country. And as always, we love it when you're part of the conversation. So get your thoughts in. We want to read your messages. The WhatsApp number to send your messages to is 0809 440 981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. And don't forget, we're streaming live as well. Yes, we are. It's up on our YouTube channel. It's Smooth981. So you can post a comment underneath the live stream. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we stream a lot of the shows across the station. All right, so let's get into it. The analyst this morning, Gbubemi, is in. Well, I think Mr. C is going to be joining us shortly, but Gbubemi is here with us. Good morning, Gbubemi, and welcome.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Lagos.
All right, pleasure to have you. Let's get straight into the conversation. The first headline comes from The Nation. Nigeria needs 312,000 metric tons of seeds to achieve food security, and this is according to the minister.
Food security, as we all know, is a very important issue, especially now where we've been plagued with myriad issues from climate conditions to security issues that have challenged farming and farmers and farming practices. So largely we've become deficient in that. This has also led to the rising cost of food across the nation. So this is a very important topic, and it's very nice that they're focusing on this as well. Some of the seeds that have been highlighted as part of this initiative are rice, maize, wheat, sorghum, and cowpea. And these are basically, most of the common staple foods items that make up the staple food items across the north and south regions of the country. Now, when we talk about seed security, food security regarding seeds, one of the things I've always considered is right from the development of the seed up until production as as an end product. And I know we have quite a number of we have at least one or two seed research institutes owned by the government, and then some other ones like the IIT, for example, that support research. So seed development in terms of improving quality and variety of seeds across the years has not really been a problem. However, generating the amount that we need, has been a problem, partly for some of the things that I cited earlier, climate issues and security issues. So even as we try to, address food security, food sufficiency regarding seed development, we also need to look at things like soil practices, for example, because you can have quality seed, sown in deficient soil that wouldn't reap the appropriate yield that you're looking for. So that's one of the other things that we're looking at. So even as they are working towards development and acquisition of a variety of seeds to meet up with this target, it's also important for them to consider working with associated agencies or ministries, or institutions, to support this development. I'm not quite sure if this is a 1 year target. No timeline was given as to when they expect to achieve this. But I hope that they can, partner with the right institutes, public and private, to be able to sort this out.
All right, thank you for that, Gbubemi. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. We're moving on to the next headline, and this one comes from The Guardian. Naira abuse. Oluwo cautions EFCC over arrests, advocates public enlightenment. Mr. C?
Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Gbubemi. So, the paramount ruler of Iwoland was speaking yesterday, and he was advising the EFCC to pause its prosecution of alleged offenders or people who are alleged to have mutilated the Naira and focus more on public enlightenment. And the reasons he gave for this were as follows: that one, the spraying of money, according to him, is a cultural practice which is more associated with people from the southeastern part of Nigeria and the southwestern part. And he made reference to some alleged or presumed spirit that comes upon people from these areas of the country at social functions and makes them lose all control and uncontrollably spray money all over the place. Now, with all due respect to the monarch, the law is the law, right? And ignorance of the law is no defense, is no excuse, and is no mitigation. Now, the truth of the matter is yes, Nigerians are social in nature. Nigerians tend to be generous, but there are more decent ways of giving money to the bride or to the couple that's getting married. More often than not, when you seriously interrogate the spring, it's usually to show off to third parties and people watching that you're very rich and you have money to throw around. If you truly love the couple, why not write them a check? Why not transfer money to them? Or at some later date, even hand over the money decently. So, yes, maybe the EFCC should also look at public enlightenment. Maybe public enlightenment will chase away the spirit which the monarch has referred to. But more importantly, what will deter Nigerians down the line is the fact that it's no more business as usual, and people will actually face the repercussions of their actions. When that becomes a regular and consistent thing, then you will find that Nigerians will start to obey the law. Because when we go to other countries, we're behaved not because we want to behave. We behave ourselves because we do not want to be visited with the consequences of our actions.
All right, let's go on to WhatsApp. This is Francis from Ojo, and he says, I just want to know if all the 36 state governors create an initiative to go into agriculture, also thereby creating employment in the process, generating state revenue, and also having enough food to distribute in and outside the states, are we still going to be having food shortage or crisis? From Vanguard, Polytechnic students protest HND BSc dichotomy.
So students of the National Association of members of the National Association of Polytechnic Students of the Osun State chapter stormed the state capital to seek audience with the governor to complain about the dichotomy in the BSc HND situation. Now, if we recall, a bill was passed into law, I think about 2021 or so, seeking to harmonize both degrees. Now, essentially, the dichotomy reflects in hiring practices, especially in the civil service, where, for example, polytechnic graduates are not placed on the same level as degree holders on entry. So I think polytechnic graduates are placed on level 7, while degree holders are placed on level 8. And then polytechnic holders also, are capped at a certain level. They can't rise beyond a certain level in the civil service. So these are part of the things that the bill has sought to harmonize. Now, the bill was presented to President Buhari in 2022, 2023, I think, but he didn't assent to it. So it's being awaiting assent before going into law. And what they have now said is that, they're appealing to the president to assent to the bill now, and they're seeking for him to do that before the 29th of May, which would mark as 1 year in office. Now, what they have also said is that they've seen that the president has been assenting to other bills, and they've wondered, why he hasn't ascended to this. So this is more like a plea on their behalf. I think, or rather, I believe that if the bill, has gone through the houses, has been passed by the National Assembly, and is awaiting assent by the president, I don't see any reason for the delays. I'm not quite sure. No explanation has been given as to why there are delays, but I believe that it's time for the president to take a look into this and either assent or give reasons as to why they're not assenting. Essentially, I know that some years ago, and I'm not quite sure how this is related as well, there were plans to convert the polytechnics into, I think, universities of technology. So Yaba Tech and Kaduna Poly, were the pilot institutions for this. So I believe, and I stand to be corrected, that these two institutions offer a bachelor's of technology program together with an HND until this is harmonized and then HNDs are phased out. So it's essentially a call for the president to take a look into this and assent to the bill.
All right, thank you for that, Gbubemi. We've got a message coming through. This is Ajayi. Ajayi says it's okay for EFCC to go after those abusing the Naira, but why leave out those actually sabotaging the economy by openly selling the Naira at various event centers across the country? It has now become impossible to get Naira notes at banks or ATMs. All right, Ajayi, thank you for your message. Let's move on to the next headline, and this one comes from Vanguard. Electricity tariff hike. 65% of businesses may shut down, and this according to the organized private sector in Nigeria.
Okay, so the OPS, in a statement I think released yesterday, indicated that due as a result of the recent tariff increase for only Band A customers, that 65% of businesses located and operating in Nigeria may shut down. Now, I think personally this is quite alarmist and it's not exactly the true picture. Now, what is the true picture? Prior to the increase in tariff for Band A customers, a lot of these businesses were not even relying on public power supply. They had gas-fired generators, they had diesel power generators, which they were running to support their production activities because their claim then was they cannot afford a break in power such that even when you visited such premises and there was public power, the generating sets were up, running, and firing. Now, people need to understand this. Yes, the tariff has been increased, but it only becomes payable if the statutory allocated period of hours has been supplied. So if it hasn't been supplied, there is no justification for a bill being sent for that amount and then even for a payment to be requested. Now, what is the truth? Nigerian businesses are struggling or were struggling, but the economy has started to show signs that a recovery is slowly underway. And by, say, Q3, we should start to see some more solid signs. So rather than raise this unnecessary alarms, right, the OPS and the manufacturers should be prepared to have logs for electricity supply taken and which can be presented at any possible time to justify why they shouldn't pay the increase. Now, when this increase was done, we all know what the dollar rate was. Now we see that recently the naira has started to appreciate against the dollar. Now, under the multi-year tariff order arrangement, there is there are two major reviews of the tariff each year. Apart from that, there are minor reviews. I'm not certain what will kickstart a review of the tariff now, but if the naira continues to appreciate against the US dollar, which is one of the factors, and the government is able to rein in inflation or reduce it substantially, then we should see another review of the tariff price in which the tariff price actually does come down. And contrary to what a lot of Nigerians believe, it's not the price of every good or service that goes up that does not come down. The way the power industry has been structured, the way it has been arranged, the tariffs are fluid. They can either increase or decrease. So let's see what happens. Rather, what the businesses should be talking about, that's the OPS, they should be talking about the indiscriminate taxation of their businesses by governments at national, subnational levels, and even local government levels. They should be seeking for a harmonization of taxes. They should be seeking for proper provision of infrastructure. They should also be seeking for proper access routes along the highways where there's distributors, where the supply trucks do not have to pay bribes to rogue elements of the security forces. These are the sort of issues they should be harping on. But truly, I do not believe 65% was shut down because Band A customers had their tariff increased, given the reasons I've stated earlier.
All right, let's look at the messages. Joseph Menyi says, this country of ours is one filled with hypocrisy and misplaced priorities. So rather than go after all those Nigerians round tripping the dollar, corrupt government officials and private public sector, but always engage going for the soft targets to achieve cheap popularity. They're busy going for those spraying Naira at events. How does that help the economy or provide employment? Well, two things can be wrong at the same time, Joseph. Don't you think so? Dan Okuda says the EFCC should be applauded for this bold move to stem the abuse and mutilation of the Naira during social gatherings. Ignorance of the law is not a defense to crime. And let's see, JP says, Mr. C, the payment is made up front, not after service. So it's a case of refund if the service isn't met. I do agree most were on petrol generators, and I think a lot should look into renewable energy if these prices are too high for the business's needs. All right, you're still listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Do stay with us. The conversation continues.
So for people, industries,
Okay, that's true. That's true.
he's talking about residents. Industries don't need to.
Hi people, my name is Grace, and if you want good music, stay tuned to Smooth 98.1. You are an orchestra. Watching you move, it's like listening to a symphony of body parts directed by a maestro. When you walk, it is like watching a G-class stroll across an octave accented by a C sharp. When you talk, the cadence of your voice is a tenor saxophone, making love to a cello at perfect pitch. And you are so smooth. That's why we keep it here on 98.1. This is Justin EJ, signing out. Music is life, and life is music. Here on Smooth 98.1. I go by the name Sammy. Don't touch that down.
It's still freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1. The analysts are in. We're looking at the headlines across the country. Keep the messages coming. We want to hear from you. 0809 440 981. And you can also tweet at Smooth981. We're streaming live on YouTube as well. It's Smooth981. And you can post a comment underneath that live stream. Wale says there's too much hoopla on the electricity tariff hike. Most manufacturing companies are even off-grid or self-generate with diesel. And for the residential customers in Band A that actually get the power, it is within their power to determine the amount of electricity they consume. Besides, the grid power, despite the increase, is still way cheaper than using generators. People who are not in Band A should stop crying more than the bereaved. Let's move on to the next headline. This one comes from Punch. Lagos to extend Blue Rail line to Ogun.
Okay, so the Lagos State government is in talks with the Ogun State government on the extension of the Blue Rail line further down to Agbara. Now, as we're all aware, the neighboring states adjacent to Lagos already have railway services from Lagos to them. So there's a railway service from Lagos to Oyo through, and it stops in Ibadan. Now, Lagos State government is desirous of ensuring that this is extended to Ogun State. Now, why is this necessary? Lagos is overpopulated or is densely populated, and you don't have an infinite supply of land. Now, what actually makes sense is to develop train services to the neighboring states, such that those neighboring states that still have vast amounts of land that can be used for housing can then house people who can then come into Lagos, come into the city to work, and then at the end of the day, they go back. Now, when these services are properly implemented, it not only drives the economies of all the states connected by these train services, it also ensures a better standard of living for the people, because all they have to do is hop onto a train, come to work, hop back onto a train, and go back. And this is what obtains in global cities like London and New York. You find that they have train services to areas outside their locations, and the bulk of the people who work in these two locations actually do not work in those cities. Now, currently there is a phase 2 of the Blue Rail line from Okoko from someplace in Okoko, connecting Malchu to Okoko, and it's supposed to be finished in 2027. Now, after that, 6 stations will be built in Festac, Elakaja, Trade Fair, Volkswagen, Lasso, and Okokomaiko, along with 3 bridges in Mazamaza, Satellite Town, and Lasso. Now, What does all of this mean? Connecting the dots. The Lagos State government is desirous of having an effective transport master plan and system in place as part of its goal to becoming a truly global city. Now, for that to happen, you have to fully develop the rail sector, you have to fully develop the water sector, water transportation. Now, if you have all these people being moved by rail, it reduces to some extent the amount of people or the volume of motorists that have to use the roads. Now, this makes sense from a place of global warming. We reduce the amount of carbon dioxide pollution that is emanating from Lagos, but ultimately you're also lengthening the lifespan of the average Lagos resident. So kudos to Lagos State government on this. I do hope they're able to reach an agreement with the Ogun State government, and that politics aside, they can get this up and running so that other states in other parts of Nigeria can copy this model so that the country as a whole benefits from this experience.
JP via WhatsApp says a major plus. The railway should go via regions to connect the whole country in the end. Ogun has some good industrial land and people can commute for business. A major plus. Next, Ogun to Delta and Aba etc. All right, let's move on to Punch. ASEPA, which is the Abia State Environmental Sanitation and Protection Agency, begins campaign against indiscriminate refuse dumping in Abia.
So the Abia State Environmental Protection Agency kicked off a 6-day public sensitization campaign against indiscriminate dumping of refuse in the capital. What they're basically doing is sensitizing people on the need to dispose of their waste properly, and they have set a disposal time. So they've said residents can only dispose of waste between 5 p.m. and 6 a.m. And this would make it easier for the agency, the relevant waste disposal agencies, to collect the waste and dispose of them properly. They've also said that they've noticed that residents are fond of sending minors to the waste sites to dump their waste, and they've said that, people shouldn't do that because it's not safe for them. So they're doing all of this ahead of the rainy season, so they're clearing drainages, clearing pathways to ensure, that the city is clean. This is a nice initiative. One of the things I've noticed, however, is that it appears as though while they're setting plans in place for waste disposal, they haven't quite settled on a waste disposal fee. So, for example, in Lagos, what we have with Loma is that all of the houses are registered with Loma in some sort of way, and everybody pays like a monthly fee depending on which PSP is operating in that area, and then you get a waste disposal bill. So it appears as if this is the structure that they want to put in place. So they haven't quite finalized on what to pay, because there's a part in the story that says that the revenue generating agency is still coming up with the fees to pay. They've also said that residents should also get their like an estate identification number, which would feed into this payment to the revenue management agency. So one thing I've noticed, and I always say this when we talk about sanitation issues, is there's something that Cross River and Akwa Ibom states have done that I believe that all states in Nigeria need to emulate. It's very important for states to look at what they've done. If you go, to Uyo, if you go to Calabar, and not just even the major cities, the roads are clean, the drains are clear, people don't drop, waste indiscriminately. So they've somehow managed to build a culture within the citizens in those two states to encourage sanitation. I believe that one of the first steps is for people to be able to adopt that culture, whereby you understand that you can't just, drink a soft drink and then throw the PET bottle on the floor, or eat something in a cellophane wrap and then just throw it on the floor. Every time I see people do that, I always just wonder, if everybody did that, what do you think, the whole place would look like? And who do you expect to clean it up? So that personal, reinforcement as to how to, be clean is very, very important. But then again, we also say, that if you expect something for the citizens, you also have to meet them halfway by providing the resources. So there are also things like, providing public bins. They've said something about ensuring that transport providers also provide waste disposal in the buses, so people don't throw things out of the window. This is also very, very important. So, even as they do their sensitization, enforcement, they should be ready to also kick in with enforcement to make sure that their plans, go well.
All right, thank you for that, Gbubemi. Joseph says, again, these so-called discos invented different supply bands before the announcement of the tariff hike by NERC. Ikeja Disco has reduced power supply to only 4 hours daily. Which band do I belong to? Well, I'm sure you can find that information on your billing statement or get in touch with your disco if you're not too certain. Let's move on to the next headline, and this one is coming from Vanguard. Naira depreciates to 1,105 Naira to the dollar in parallel markets.
Okay, so reading the story, I'm not even sure why it's a story and why I'm analyzing it, but nevertheless,
Well, you're here, and it's on here.
whatever. So the Naira depreciated to 1,105 Naira against the US dollar yesterday in the parallel market from 1,100 Naira per dollar on Tuesday, but they appreciated in Nigerian foreign exchange markets. Anyway, so I'm going to do a slightly different twist. So many reasons have been given for the seeming appreciation of the Naira against the dollar in the last few weeks, and gladly, yesterday the CBN governor addressed this in a meeting held in the US. And a question was asked whether the CBN was defending the Naira with the foreign exchange reserves. And the CBN governor was quite clear that that was not what was happening, that rather the CBN was encouraging a willing buyer, willing seller arrangement. So what they've tried to do is get everybody into the same room. You have dollars you want to buy, you have dollars you want to sell, meet, agree on a rate, and that's that. Now, they've also noticed that over a period of time, the rate in the parallel market has informally dictated or suggested the price at the normal market. So what the CBN has rather done is they've chosen to address the retail market, which are the BDCs. They've agreed to supply $10,000 to willing BDCs, and when they buy those dollars, the last transaction was done about 918 Naira to a dollar. They bought at 980 Naira to a dollar, and they sold at about 1,020 Naira. That's a 49 spread. Now, it must be pointed out that not every BDC is required to sign up for this transaction, but if you do sign up, you're bound by the provisions. Now, what the CBN is trying to do in this regard is the BDCs, to a large extent, are the last mile for consumers or customers. So if they can get it, if they can satisfy demand at that level, right, and then there's some sort of positive feedback that the Naira is actually appreciating, it will then inform the transactions that go on at the NAFEX window, because at the NAFEX window, the big organizations, the companies, the banks are all trying to, in a sense, hedge their positions against, okay, what do we think the rate will be at the black market? Now, in addition, another factor that has contributed to the Naira seemingly appreciating is that the BDCs have finally been recognized as agents for international money transfer organizations. And this has helped to recalibrate diaspora remittances, because before now, what we noticed was that official remittances had gone down because people were then doing peer-to-peer transactions which weren't showing up on official records. But now we have them being recognized, and this move should bring in 15 to 20 billion dollars into the Nigerian economy on an annual basis. So beyond all of these measures, which are short-term to mid-term measures, the most important thing is the economy has to become more productive. We have to return to agriculture. We have to look at formalizing and standardizing the skills we export to other countries, which we call JAPA, and we'll be fine.
Let's look at the messages coming through. Ibukun says, wouldn't it be great for the federal government to focus on using real for commodities and petroleum products so we can get trucks off the road and remove the cost of non-state actors and rogue enforcement agencies? On the environment, as far as I know, Calabar has been clean since the 80s. It's not a new thing, but a cultural one. Oluwo says, When I see people drop waste on the road, I always wonder who they expect to pick up after them or for them. I feel like knocking them when I see them do it. A few days ago, it was an elderly man that did it on the highway. We need a serious reorientation coupled with punishments to help us change. Francis from Ojo says, I hear your thoughts about Cross River and Akwa Ibom having neat environments, Gbubemi, but there are no waste baskets in Lagos streets. Plus, the population in those states you mentioned are not even half the numbers of citizens in Lagos. Even New York is not so clean. Abbas, that is a very interesting comment. Well, that is it for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your messages. And special thanks to you, Gbubemi, for joining us on the show. Stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.
On Smooth 98.1.
Oh.